Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to be taking a look at the audio pool. So this is somewhere in Cubase. You probably don't need to go that often, but it's the kind of place that when you do need to go there, it's because something's probably gone maybe not the way you wanted it to. You want to rescue something. Yeah, it's kind of like the international rescue of Cubase, and we're hoping that Virgil Tracy is going to turn up in Thunderbird 2 and save the day. So let's see if we can achieve that. We're going to do it via looking at a few different stages of recording and then seeing what happens, how things change in the pool, and different things you can do in there as well. So first off, let's look at importing some media from Media Bay and see what happens there. So here we are in Cubase, and I'm just going to go to Media Bay and just import this loop, which I've sort of pre-selected. So yeah, I've actually planned ahead. Who would have thought that? So just going to duplicate that. This is just a fairly straightforward kind of big beat drum loop from Steinberg's content. So with that out of the way, let's see if that's ended up in the pool, because these are audio files, but they're kind of not audio files in the way you would think. So you need to do something with them to end up with the audio. And in this case, it's import them into Cubase. And now we can see if we open up the pool window, which is done with Command or Control P, or you can go under Media and then open pool window. Here's the pool window. So there's some useful information here. Firstly is the name of the file. And let's just drag that across a bit. How many times it's been used, whether it was recorded, whether it's a musical thing, so you can change the tempo. So we've looked at that previously, but here's where you tell Cubase what the tempo is if something hasn't gone according to plan. And then we got the time signature, a bit of information about the file, etc. A little image overview, which is sometimes quite useful, particularly on a longer file. And then we can see where it's ended up. So here you can see I'm on a Mac. If you're on Windows, it would be like C drive or S drive, something like that. And then the actual path to the file, which is not always easy to expand all the way, because this window probably needs a bit of love, I think it's fair to say. Let's just drag that across and hopefully, so we can see that it's been converted into a WAV file. So if we were to open this up, we could see that. And in fact, if you right click or two finger tap, we get a whole load of options, which you can see. And one of them is that you can reveal in Finder or show in Explorer if you're on Windows. And there it is there. So you can see, here's this. And in fact, there's where I was playing around with it a little earlier on. So this isn't in the pool, but it is in our audio folder. So I can delete these. So for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to get rid of these. So here's that file, which we can see, again, back in the pool window. We can see it's called 085A. And the reason it's got 01 in there is because 085A already existed. So that's pretty straightforward if you import something from the audio pool, etc. But let's take a look at what happens when you record something. Right, so here I've set up so I can record just a little bit of bass. I'm just going to record a 4-bar part and then not set it on loop. So I'm just going to go all the way through and finish this like you would with a normal recording. So that's what happens when you record normally. I'm sure you've all done that many and many a time. And if we look in the pool, we can see that's just appeared here. It's used once. It's a file that was recorded in Cubase, so it's marked with this little record thing here. And it's, interestingly, it's not marked as being musical at the moment. So if we were to change that, if we were to tick this, then when we change the tempo in Cubase, it would change with it. But if we didn't do that, it wouldn't. So we'll look at that in a second. All the standard stuff, you can see how long it is, a little waveform, and also that it's been recorded in the same place. So this is often useful if you've got a project where things are all over the place, or things are missing, or you're not sure if you can transform it, then The thing to do is to look in here and make sure that all the paths are the same. So obviously the last bit will be different. So this bit on the right-hand end will be different because there will be different file names. But if they are all in different places, then you need to back up your project to a new folder. There's a video on the channel about doing that because otherwise you can have all sorts of trouble. So this is one of the reasons why you need to be just a bit fastidious about setting things up when you initially start recording. And also, if you import any audio, as we'll see later on, you need to tick copy file to audio to project folder, because otherwise it will end up staying where it was, and that can cause all sorts of problems which you really don't want to be dealing with. So that's what happens when you record in an ordinary mode. But what about when you record in cycle mode? Because it looks slightly different. Let's take a look. So here I'm going to record the same part, but I'm going to do it in cycle mode. Now, there are multiple modes here available. I typically leave it in keep history. And annoyingly, that's off the bottom of my screen capture area. So I'm just going to move this up just for the moment. And it's still not going to play ball. Thanks, Steinberg. Right, finally. So we've got three modes. We've got keep history, which creates new lanes and events. So cycle history and replace, or replace. Replace is like old school sort of tape almost, but we'll see that actually it isn't quite like that really. So we're just going to do keep history for the moment. So in fact, I'm going to rename this track as keep history. And then I'm just going to record twice round on the same part and see what happens. So there we see what happens in terms of recording. So we've got effectively multiple takes stacked on top of each other. If you're not aware of this, then this is a useful feature of Cubase, and you can expand this by looking at the lanes, which is done with this button here or one on the inspector. And you can choose between those different takes, etc. with the comp tool if you have that available. I think that's available on Artist and Pro, but not on Elements. But certainly you can pick this take or that take, and you can see the played waveform is changing between one and the other, depending on which one I pick. But that's an aside. Let's have a look at what's in the pool for that. So we can see in the pool this keep history cycled one. If we expand the plus here, we can see we've got take one and take two. So it's showing you which parts have been done here. And this can be useful because you can drag these on individually. You don't have to drag the whole thing on. So one of the useful features of the pool is you can drag the audio to a track. So let's drag take one. We can see there we've got take one. And now this is on its own track separately. So it isn't there as a cycled lane, etc. That's that first take. And we could do the same with the second take, etc. And then you could chop between them. So this saves a lot of playing around with dealing with where these repeat points, etc. are. So Cubase, fortunately, does this in a fairly intelligent manner. I'm just going to undo the creation of those two tracks because that may confuse things a bit later on. But it does a nice job in doing that. And we've even got this incomplete take, which you could put here. So that's just that end note that I played, and so on. So these are nicely segmented, and it's quite useful to be able to do that. We can see that things like the origin time of this are all sensibly put in there, so it knows that that's where this came from, which, as we'll see a bit later on, can be useful depending on what you've done in your session and how wrong things have gone. So let's just take a quick look at what happens in a different recording mode. So here I've changed the recording mode to replace. So this will replace it. So it behaves slightly differently in the project window, as we'll see. So I'm just going to do effectively exactly the same thing again. Play round 2 times round and then do, in air quotes, an ending. So here we can see that Cubase has behaved differently. So we've got that ending bit that I had, but then the rest of it is there from the previous take, just as if you'd done this on some kind of tape machine that was looping over and over, etc. So it's effectively removed the original, and we can see we haven't got any lanes. So when we do this, we've just got literally just what you can see there. So there's nothing hidden underneath, there's no cross-hatching, etc. But if you go to the pool and we look at this cycle replace here, we can see it's exactly the same as before. So we've got take 1, take 2. So if you do that, maybe you didn't realize, you can just drag that first take, and the first take was the best. Just drag it in, and there it is. No faffing around, no trying to find out exactly where it was, timing-wise, etc. It's all in there. So that can be useful, particularly, say, if you prefer using replace mode, but occasionally maybe you decide afterwards the first take was the best, or you want to hear it, etc. Nice and straightforward to do that using that. So now let's take a look at one of the other features, which is to do with Cubase retaining the location where you originally recorded the part. So I'm going to change the arrangement, in air quotes, slightly. I'm just going to move this around, and then we're going to record something different and see that Cubase remembers where things have been recorded, which again can be useful. Okay, so here we have a situation where I've added a guitar track. So it's just a straightforward piece of rhythm guitar, etc. We won't put you through all that, but let's say during the course of your session, you decide to delete this. So we're just going to delete that. One thing which was a surprise to somebody I've been teaching this week is that doesn't mean it's gone. So you can nearly always, with some caveats, bring things back once you've deleted them. So let's say you record a bunch of other things, you've done this, that, and the other. So we'll just record another take. I won't put you through it, but I'm going to record something different on that track. So here I've recorded a different guitar part. It's just doubling what was done. And then later on in the session, you go, you know what? I'd like to go back to that previous one, which I deleted ages ago. And you think, it might all be lost, but it's not lost. It's still in the pool. So if we open up the pool window, we will see that there is a trash. And if we expand the trash, there's guitar 1. It may appear like that, but you can expand it. We can see there's that take where I went round and then a little bit at the end, but we can just use it, but you can't put it in when it's in the trash, okay? So the first thing you're going to need to do is to drag it from the trash back into the audio folder, which is reasonably straightforward. Once it's there, we can then insert it. Now, you could just drag it like we've seen before, but let's say you think you've got a complicated project and you think, where was it before? Cubase has remembered, so we can see that its origin is bar 5, beat 1. So we could just insert it there, or if we right click and do insert into project, we can pick where it's going to go at the cursor, at the left locator, or at origin, which is useful. So if we put at origin, we can now see it's been put back on that track we had selected, and there's that there. Now, if we had a new track made, so let's just call it guitar chords, with that one selected, again, we'll go back to the pool. We'll find our guitar, which is still in the trash here because we didn't make use of it. So I'll just put it back in audio and then insert into project at origin. And there it is. So we've got our guitar chords track back exactly where it was. So in terms of using the pool, that's the basics covered for what most people need to do. So it's finding things which you may have lost or you may have thought were lost. Often they will still be in here, unless you've done anything like move project to new folder and then remove those audio files. They will all still be in here, which is really useful. So you can find where they are, put them back in. In a normal project, these will be really, really full. So you won't just have 5 things in here. You might have 500, etc. So you might need to do a bit of sorting. It's another reason why naming your tracks is a good idea, because then it makes some sense rather than it all being, audio 01, etc., this, that, and the other. But in general, you'll be able to find them. Now, in terms of the features of the audio pool window, we're just going to take a quick tour of what's available here. So here we are in the audio pool. First things first, if you've got something selected and you want to hear it, you can just play it. So there's that. We can hear that bass. So it's nice and quick and easy. You don't have to import it into the project to find out what's what. It's really easy to find that. We can pick all the attributes, etc., that are available. So if you're not using some of them, so for instance, the info takes up a lot of space, you may not be particularly interested in it. So you can just get rid of info, and then you can have a bit more space on your screen, particularly for the path, which can get quite long if you have gone deep on folders, etc., that kind of thing. And obviously we can expand all of them or contract all of them all in one go. So if you had trash, etc., then that would appear there. We can import. So this is the same as doing file, import audio. So this is exactly the same as if going file, import, and then audio file. Nothing particularly interesting to see there. Search is only really useful in a large project, but say if you've named things sensibly, then this is going to make it much easier than trying to scroll through thousands, potentially tens of thousands of different audio elements you've got in there, and then you can audition them individually. So let's just put in bass. There's our bass, and then we can listen to them. But notice that it's only doing the raw audio files. It's not doing these individual takes. So the usefulness of this can be a bit variable as far as I'm concerned. Just got information about project folder, which is where you should be storing all your audio, and the pull record folder, which is in media audio. Now we're going to take a look at what happens when things go a little bit awry, why this can be useful. So here, what I'm going to do is probably the most commonly seen thing I've seen people do, which then leads to projects going wrong further down the road. So it doesn't break things straight away, it breaks things later on. So this is a useful tip, which I try to reinforce to everybody. If you do this, you won't have a problem, but we're going to see what happens when you don't do it right. So if we go to import an audio file, I'm going to find, let's just import this. Now, if we don't tick this, if you leave this unticked, which I'm going to do the bad thing. This is not the thing to do. Don't do this. If you leave that unticked and then import it in. So let's just put it on new track. So here's our imported drums. And note, we've got the little wobbly icon, which shows that this has been stretched to fit. So it's in musical mode, which is indicated by the note, and then the very audio icon shows that this is actually being changed to fit with what's here. So I don't know whether this will fit musically. It probably won't, given the fact I just randomly selected it, but I've heard worse. Now, let's look at why this is a problem, and we can see this in the pool. So if we go into the pool here, we've got our gunshot beat here, and the problem is, if you look closely here, you can see that it's not in the same place as the rest of the project. You may be saying, well, why is that a problem? There's two reasons why this can be a problem. Firstly, if you want to back up your project or move it to another computer or something, the normal thing you would do is you would go to your project folder and you would copy the whole thing. So let's just go and look at what's in the project folder. So here, this is the project folder. Confusingly, it's called Audio Pool because that's what I called the project. But in our project folder, we've got our Cubase files. So we can see we've got those CPR files. We've got the backup files. We've got track pictures. We've got images. And we've got the audio. So you can see here's all of our audio, but notably absent is our gunshot beat. So if we were to just copy this whole folder, let's say we'd copy this whole thing, maybe we'd compress it and then send it to a friend, we would have a problem because that would be missing. So if we open that up, it will say that file is missing. And if you're on another computer, it's not going to be able to find it because you probably don't have access to it. So that's problem number one that arises from this. Your project isn't complete, it wouldn't be backed up, etc. The second problem that can arise from this is if you do this again and then you do some destructive processing to it. So let's say you did some pitch shifting or some time stretching, etc., to that. Then when you come back to this project, this file will no longer be what it was. It might be a different tempo. It might have been distorted, etc. There's all sorts of things you can do to it. And then you've got a problem because, again, your project doesn't sound how it should. It might load up, but it will be different. So always, 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 always make sure that you tick the magic box that makes your life easier, which again, this is why you do this, because it means that you never get those problems, okay? So I know it means you use up more space on your hard drive, but storage isn't particularly expensive unless you buy a MacBook, and then it is hideously expensive. But that's my own fault, isn't it? Storage isn't that expensive, particularly often. You're talking fairly small things for audio files. Doing this will save so much time and effort and so many problems. So this is probably the most common thing I get when people say, oh, my project doesn't work, this, that, and the other. In fact, I'm doing a workshop with a school next week about this exact problem, apart from a couple of other problems. But this is the one that's been really, really hamstringing them, because when they move to a different computer, suddenly nothing works. So just do that and all will be well. Now, finally, we're just going to look at the effect of the musical thing and the tempo here. So you can see that everything that's been recorded, nearly everything that's been recorded, is recorded at the right tempo. But you can see that actually the original tempo of our bass cycle KH isn't in there. So we need to type. So I'm just going to double click and put that in. And now, as long as that is correct, when we go to our project and tick musical, so in fact we're just going to do it on this KH one. So if I click that there, you can see that two things have happened. So musical has appeared, but also it's showing that Very Audio is going to work on this. So if we change the tempo now, you'll see something interesting. So you can see that the ones which are set in musical mode are changing with the tempo, and the ones that aren't. So the guitar is now out of time because it's taking longer. You can see it's stretched out longer than it was. So because we're at 100 BPM, this is running at 95, and now it would be out of time. So let's just mute the extra drums. We'll mute one of the guitars. So we've got a bass which is going to be in time, drums which are going to be in time, but then we've got a guitar which isn't going to be in time. And then when we play that, we can hear it's miles off, and we can fix that pretty easily. So if you get in a situation like this, musical mode is ticked here as well. So if you've got your info line up and musical mode is present, then you can just change it there. And you can see we've put it in musical mode, and that has fixed the problem. So if you get one of these alignment things, you can do it here or you can do it in the pool, but it's much easier to see whether a lot of things are set to musical in the pool. But also here's where you set the original tempo of what it was recorded at, which Cubase generally does, but we've seen here that in this bass cycle one, it didn't do it for whatever reason. So by setting it manually, we know that it's at 95. You often need to do this with imported samples as well. So in this case, typically, it's imported it correctly and worked it out. But if you get badly trimmed samples, etc., Cubase will often get the tempo wrong, and then you get a bit of a mess. So you can set it manually here, and then you're all good. Finally, we're just going to take a look at some of the right-click options that are available in the menu in the pool window. So here we are in the pool window, and I've changed the arrangement slightly so that some of this is now in the trash because I deleted it, and some of it is here, but it's not being used. So if you ever see anything where you've got audio present, but it's not being used, then it's not a current part of your project, and it isn't actually doing anything. But that doesn't mean to say you want to get rid of it, because you might want to use it later on. But let's take a look at some of the right-click menu options. So we've seen a few of these first. So you've got import medium, import audio CD, which for the younger viewers amongst us, audio CDs were a way of having music and actually owning it, which is increasingly uncommon these days. We can import or export the pool, so you can do the entire pool and then make that available for other projects. It's not something I've actually used a great deal of, but occasionally it's useful to be able to just ship the entire thing off somewhere else. Revealing Finder is really useful. So particularly if you've got something where it's not where it should be, or you don't know really where it is. I mean, obviously the computer knows where it is, but it's much easier to do Revealing Finder and then find it quickly like this rather than trying to navigate to it manually. We can convert files. So here you can do sample rate conversion, bit depth conversion, etc., that kind of thing. Again, can be useful. And we've also got the ability to write attributes to the file. So all of this metadata can get written to the file. So if you're transferring it to another computer, another studio, etc., that can be useful if they can make use of it. Some file management here. Now, one of them here is remove unused media. So we've got this base cycle replace trap, which isn't used. So if I do remove unused media, we've got two options. We can remove it from the pool or we can put it in the trash. So if you put it in the trash, you can get to it later on. If you do remove from pool, it won't be present here. Now, this doesn't delete the file from your hard disk, okay? It just means it's no longer part of the project. So I'm going to do remove from pool. And you can see that's now gone. Now, if we open up the audio, we can see that it is actually still there. So if we wanted to re-import it, we could do that. That wouldn't be a problem. We might have lost some of the information in terms of its placement, but it's still there. So generally, if you look in your audio folder, there will be your entire litany of misdeeds will be available. Now, if you've got something here, if we do empty trash, we've got two choices here. We can do remove from pool, which is what we did earlier on, but you can also do erase. So if I just flick back to the Finder window, so there we can see base rec 01 is there. Now, if we do empty trash, and then I'm going to pick erase. So this is kind of the nuclear option, but if you want to get rid of something and you definitely don't want to send it to somebody, so certainly I've had times when there's been, let's call them experiments, which I wouldn't want anyone else to hear. I would use this option to get rid of it before I sent it anywhere for them to play around with it. It also means all your unused takes aren't taking up space if that's a concern. So I'm going to click erase, and you can see that file has gone. So this is the one time when Cubase is being destructive because that isn't coming back. It's gone. We may be able to recover it with file recovery software, but generally, if you've taken that option, it's gone. It's not coming back. And certainly, if you then zip this up and send it somewhere else, it's not going to be there. So if you want to forensically remove something, that's the way to go. You can create new versions. So here, let's say you've got a process you wanted to do to something and you were concerned. So there we've got the new version here. So we can use this separately. And then by having a new version, if you do any of Cubase's processing to it, it will be done to this version and not the other one. They will not be shared. So let's just take a quick look at that. So there we've got our guitar one. And then our new take here. So let's put that on a separate track. So here in guitar chords V2, just going to drag that on here. And they look identical other than the fact you can see the file names are different depending on when you've got them turned on. But now if I do any editing to this, it's not going to affect this. So if I do some processing to it, let's just normalize that. Now, normally it would have asked if I wanted to do this to a new version or not, but by creating that new version, that's what Cubase does in the background. So you can see these are separate and independent from each other. Insert into project, which we've seen. Selecting project, which can be useful. So sometimes you'll find an audio part in here, maybe it's a kick drum sample, that kind of thing, and you want to know where you've used it. You can just do select in project and it will be much easier to see rather than, again, trying to scoot through everything and trying to find things, particularly when they're different. Maybe you've used a few different clap samples and you want to find out where they are. And then we've got processes which are available elsewhere in Cubase, so we can do some processing. You can make our direct offline processing permanent, etc. We can find some statistics, but a lot of these are available elsewhere. So we've got all these plugins and processes which are available. So that's exactly the same as if you go here and then you've got plugins and processes. So this is something which is already available. It's just available in a different place. I think back in the day, maybe it was only available in the pool window, but now it's available in a more convenient place. So that's pretty much it for the pull window for most people's use. It's generally something that either you want to go to when you want to retrieve something you recorded earlier on. I'd say that's probably the most common use. It's useful for finding out information about where things are stored, which again, often is only needed when things have gone wrong, and for changing the original tempo of the audio to make musical mode work properly. But it's one of those things where if you spent half an hour just noodling around with it and you've experimented with it, when you really need it, it's just going to be straight away, oh, I know I need to go there. This is no problem. And then your session can continue without you thinking, oh, I lost the best take ever. Why did I do that? As ever, hope you found this video useful, and we'll see you again soon for more Music Tech Tuition.